The letter was already hanging on my garden fence when I came home from work. Bright red paper. Big black letters. Final warning. Remove illegal. Fence within 48 hours or face a $500 fine. I stood there for a second, staring at it. Illegal? The fence was 3 feet high, made of wood painted white, and sitting completely inside my property line. I built it for one reason: to stop neighborhood dogs from digging up the vegetables my late wife and I planted together years ago. Then I noticed something strange. There was no signature, no board member name, no official stamp, just HOA Compliance Department. A car door slammed behind me. I turned and saw Linda Harper walking across the street with the same smile she always wore whenever someone else had a problem. "You finally saw it," she said. I pulled the paper off the fence. "You put this here?" "I didn't have to," she replied. "The neighborhood voted. Garden fences aren't allowed anymore." That made no sense. 3 houses on my street had garden fences. One of them belonged to Linda herself. I pointed toward her yard. "What about yours?" Her smile disappeared for half a second. "Mine was approved years ago." "Mine was approved too?" Her eyes narrowed. "Not anymore." That answer bothered me more than the fine. "Not anymore?" Rules don't just disappear overnight. I walked inside, opened the folder where I kept my house papers, and found exactly what I remembered. HOA approval. Signed. Dated. Stamped. I almost laughed. The case was already over. Or at least I thought it was. Because the next morning, I stepped outside and found 3 men in reflective vests measuring my fence while Linda stood nearby holding a clipboard like she owned the entire neighborhood. Then one of the workers looked at me and said something that made my stomach drop. "Sir, we're here to remove the fence." I looked at Linda. "You approved this?" She folded her arms. "No," she said calmly. "The OA did." Then she smiled. "And by the time you're done fighting it, your garden will already be gone." I stepped between the workers and the fence. "Nobody touches it." The men looked at each other. One of them lowered his measuring tape. "Sir, we're just doing the job we were hired to do." "Hired by who?" He pointed toward Linda. "She said the HOA approved everything." For the first time that morning, Linda looked uncomfortable. "Don't drag me into this," she said quickly. "I'm only helping the board." I held up the approval papers. "This fence was approved 4 years ago." The worker studied the paper for a moment. "Then you need to call the HOA office. We can't start until we get final confirmation anyway." Linda stepped forward. "The approval expired." I looked at her. "Expired?" "Rules change." I handed the paper to the worker. "Read the last line." His eyes moved to the bottom of the page. Then he looked up at Linda. "This says approval remains valid unless the owner makes structural changes to the fence." My fence hadn't changed by a single inch. Linda crossed her arms. "That's not the current rule book?" That sentence caught my attention immediately. "Not the current rule book?" I went inside, opened the OA website, and downloaded the newest version myself. Page after page. Packing rules, noise rules, pool rules. Then I found the fence section. I read it once, then again, then a third time. I almost couldn't believe what I was seeing. The new rules actually protected me even more than the old ones did. According to the updated HOA handbook, any fence approved before the rule change was automatically protected under something called a grandfather clause. The exact words were simple: previously approved structures cannot be removed, fined, or modified by future rule changes. I smiled for the first time all day. The HOA hadn't weakened my position. They had accidentally made it stronger. I printed the page and drove straight to the office. But when I arrived, the receptionist looked nervous the moment she saw the papers. "Where did you get that copy?" she asked. "Your website." She hesitated. "That's strange." "Why?" "Because the board told homeowners that section was removed last month." I stared at her. "What do you mean they told homeowners?" She lowered her voice. They sent out emails saying old fence approvals were no longer valid. My stomach tightened. Someone wasn't misunderstanding the rules. Someone was hiding them. Then the receptionist said something that changed everything. "You aren't the only person this happened to." She opened a drawer and pulled out 3 other complaint files. 3 different homeowners, 3 approved fences, 3 identical violation notices. And on every single complaint form, the same signature appeared at the bottom. Linda Harper. Not HOA Compliance Department. Linda Harper. Suddenly, this wasn't about my garden fence anymore. This was about why one board member seemed so desperate to make approved fences disappear. I took pictures of the files with my phone before leaving the office. 3 homeowners, 3 violation notices, 3 fences that had one thing in common. All of them sat along the walking path behind our houses. And then it hit me. My garden fence wasn't the problem. Its location was. I drove home and walked behind my property to the community path that ran through the neighborhood. That's when I saw the survey stakes. Bright orange markers pushed into the ground every 20 feet. They ran straight behind my yard, then behind my neighbor's yard, then behind every house that had received one of Linda's notices. A man in a construction vest was studying a map. "What's being built here?" I asked. He looked up. "Extension project." "Extension for what?" "The Greenbelt Trail." I frowned. "The trail already ends at the park. Not after next month." He pointed at the map. The new path would cut behind several homes and connect directly to the shopping area near the main road. Then he tapped the paper again. "Problem is, these fences block the route." I looked back toward my house. Suddenly, everything made sense. This wasn't about neighborhood appearance. This wasn't about rules. Someone wanted the fences gone before homeowners started asking questions. That evening, I attended the HOA meeting. The room was packed. Apparently, I wasn't the only person who had questions. Linda sat at the front table beside HOA President Mark Reynolds. The moment she saw me walk in with a folder under my arm, her smile disappeared. During homeowner comments, I stood up. "I'd like to know why approved fences are suddenly being called illegal." Linda answered immediately. "Because the board voted to update community standards." I held up the printed rulebook. "Then why does your own handbook say previously approved fences are protected?" The room went silent. Mark reached for the paper. Linda stopped him. "It's being revised." I shook my head. "No, it says effective immediately as of January 1st. Several people started flipping through copies on their phones. Then voices started rising around the room. "My fence got one of those notices too." "Mine did too." "They told us approvals expired." Linda's face turned red. Mark looked confused. "Who told homeowners approvals expired?" Nobody answered. Then an older man stood up near the back. "I have the email right here." He raised his phone. It came from Linda. Every eye in the room turned toward her. For the first time since this started, she looked nervous. But then she did something nobody expected. She smiled. "You people are focusing on the wrong issue." She pulled a folder from her bag and dropped it on the table. "These fences are blocking a community improvement project already, approved by the city." The room exploded with questions. "What project? What city approval?" Linda opened the folder and slid a map across the table. My heart sank. The new trail wasn't going behind our properties. According to the map, it was going straight through parts of our backyards, including my garden. Then Linda looked directly at me. "You can keep your fence if you want?" She paused. "But the city can remove it anyway." The room fell silent. Then she delivered the line she had clearly been waiting to say for weeks. "Property lines don't matter much when eminent domain gets involved." The room went completely quiet. Eminent domain. Those 2 words hit everyone hard. Linda leaned back in her chair like the fight was already over. "You can argue with the HOA all you want," she said. "The city has already made its decision, but something felt wrong. Very wrong." The construction worker I spoke to had said the trail would run behind the properties, not through them. Those weren't the same thing. I raised my hand. Can we see the city approval documents? Linda didn't move. The board has copies. Then show us. More homeowners joined in. Yeah, show us. Let's see the paperwork. Linda looked toward Mark. Mark looked back at her. That was the moment I realized something important. The HOA president hadn't seen the documents either. After a long silence, Mark finally spoke. Linda, can you give us the approval file? She hesitated. Just for a second. Then she handed over the folder. Mark opened it. His expression changed immediately. He flipped through the pages again. Then again. Finally, he looked up. These aren't city documents. The room exploded. What? What do you mean? Mark held up the papers. These are proposal sketches from a private developer. Linda stood up quickly. They're planning to approve it soon. But it isn't approved now, Mark replied. No. The room became silent again. I stepped closer to the table. Who owns the land behind our homes? Nobody answered. I already knew the answer. I had checked the county records online an hour before the meeting. I pulled out another paper and placed it beside Linda's folder. The developer owns the shopping center land. I pointed to another name on the document. The company representative negotiating with the HOA is... I looked directly at Linda. Your brother? Several people gasped. Linda's face lost all color. The entire plan suddenly became clear. Remove the fences. Make homeowners believe they had no rights. Avoid resistance before the project became public. The HOA wasn't protecting the neighborhood. Someone was trying to make a business deal easier. Mark slowly removed his glasses. Is this true? Linda said nothing. That silence answered everything. 3 weeks later, the HOA held an emergency vote. Linda was removed from the board. The homeowners she had targeted dropped their fines immediately. The county opened an investigation into false violation notices and misuse of HOA authority. As for the trail project, the developer changed the route after, realizing the neighborhood wasn't going to roll over quietly. The new path stayed completely outside private property lines. My garden stayed exactly where it had always been. So did my fence. A month later, I was watering tomatoes when my neighbor walked over laughing. You know what's funny? He said. What? He pointed toward the small metal sign I had attached to the fence. It read, "This fence is HOA approved twice." Even Mark laughed when he saw it. The OO eventually asked if I would remove the sign. I smiled and gave them the same answer Linda once gave me. Rules are rules. The sign stayed. So did the fence. And every time I walked through that garden, I remembered something important. Sometimes the strongest weapon against bad rules is knowing their own rules better than they do.